Yo, hello, and welcome to the 1218 Show. My name is Mike Wilson. I am your host. Let's get into it. I want to talk today about just a finance episode, about finance mentality. We're going to talk about, in the specific case of buying a car. I had a conversation recently which sparked the idea for this episode, and I'm going to use very generic numbers in my examples. There's no reason to get into... there's no reason to make it difficult. This episode is more about mentality than it is about numbers. The car today, if you want just a base, let's say you want a nice Honda Accord or I don't know, anything, a Jeep Wrangler, or just a run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road car, a Kia, a Ford. Most things are now an SUV or some sort of crossover. It's very rare. There's very few like cars anymore. Almost everything has some sort of an SUV element to it. But you're not buying a new one for less than most of them. You can get them for less than 30 grand, but the majority of these cars cost between 30 and 40 grand now, and that's just on the average level. It starts as soon as you start adding packages and up in the brand or the style or the model, you start getting above $40,000, even $50,000. And then we're not talking about luxury vehicles where you get up into the six figures and things like that. I'm just talking about affordable family vehicles that people buy or want and use for their daily lives, their family outings, for getting to and from work, running the kids to and from wherever they need to go. It's between $30,000 and $40,000. It's kind of crazy, how fast it's gone up, in the last 20 to 25 years. Could have bought a nice, could have got a nice Jeep for $26,000, $28,000 20 years ago, and that's almost doubled in 20 years. It's kind of crazy. Again, these aren't factual statistics. This is all approximate, and so don't quote me on saying the price of Jeep has not doubled. It's only gone up 82%. I don't need to hear all that shit. You get my point. But what I want to talk about is the mentality of it. We have gotten to a point, like, our lives nowadays, so many people depend on financing of everything that they do. I don't even want to get into it. We'll talk about credit card debt on another day. If you have credit card debt, revolving credit card debt, that's number one. You have to get rid of that. I think everyone knows that. I think that's common knowledge. I was in my own hole of credit card debt for years. And I'm finally out of it. But the point is, it's a silly thing to be involved in. You need a credit card for basic things, booking flights and whatever. And some people just, they use their credit card as their daily thing because they get points, and that's understandable, as long as you're paying it off either at the end of every month or per transaction. Some people pay it off daily. Like, if they go out for the day and they spend $82, they transfer $82 from their checking account over to their credit card. I don't think that's a bad idea, because you do get the rewards points, and you're protected if somebody were to steal your information, as opposed to a bank card that's directly connected, an ATM card that's directly connected to your checking account. Though you are protected, if something were to happen, the difference is your account's seized up until they sort it out. So they can hold your money until they say, okay, you did not make these transactions, and then sometimes that can take weeks. So your money can be frozen up. I do not use my debit card for anything. I never have. I never will. Working behind the bar, as you all know, I've heard every story and people complaining about their lives and whatever. And there have been several people who have had their information stolen or whatever, and then they couldn't get their money. Like, I'm gonna have to pay a late fee for my rent. Now I'm gonna, all this because somebody stole their debit card information, used it. They went, and seized up. They spent, a bunch of money in this person's checking account. Well, they got it back, but it took them weeks to get it back. So I don't use my debit card for anything. if you use a credit card, get a credit card or whatever. If you want to use plastic and not cash, some places don't even accept cash anymore. Then get a credit card and then just pay it off every time you use it. Just transfer the money over, and then you're also accruing the points for the rewards, whatever that may be. It could be cash back or travel points, whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of different things. Y'all know that. Just I'm a big advocate of not using your debit card for anything if you can help it. Okay, back to the car thing. Yeah, I got in the conversation and I made a good point in the conversation that I didn't intend to make. But you know how that happens. Sometimes you're talking and you're like, oh shit, I just said something really smart. So I was in a conversation, we were talking about financing a car, and the point of the conversation was that people now don't look at, if they go to a car dealership, and again, these are going to be generic numbers, let's say they want this car, and it's kind of like, that's a nice car, for my lifestyle, that's exactly what I want, and it costs 40 grand, let's say. Okay, and so then they talk to him, whatever, but they've already got in their mind, like, listen, I can afford $500, let's say $500 a month in a car payment. I've got that in my, I've got that extra in my lifestyle, and then because I can afford the insurance and the gas and all the other things, I'm gonna skip all the other things and assume you do your own homework. But let's say the car payment itself, you've got budgeted so that you can make $500 payment a month. Now, by the time it's all said and done, let's say, so you go and you buy this car, it's 40 grand, you're making a $500 payment, whatever that down payment may have been to get that number for 40 grand, you had saved up and you did all that. So now you got a $500 car payment. By the time it's all said and done, after 5 years of having this financing, let's say, again, generically, that you've now paid $48,000 for this car, not including all the other expenses that come with it. So your $40,000 car has now become $48,000 over the course of the 5 years because of the interest and the financing that you did. Okay. That's how people buy cars nowadays. And it's a beautiful trick that the banks and the car dealerships and all the finance people in the world have worked and played on people. Because, what can you afford? Well, I can afford $200. Well, we got these cars over here in this lot. If you have a $7,000 car payment, we can get you in a car for $200. I mean, it makes sense. But it doesn't make sense on your end. It just makes sense to make you happy at the moment, and that's what sales is, right? So, whatever we can do to make you happy at the moment, we'll figure out, we'll plug in those pieces and get it so that you can have your $500 a month car payment. But let's say you had a finance wizard that you trusted walked into your life and said, listen, you're not going to finance this car. What you're going to do is take that down payment that you saved. Let's say you've saved $5 grand to put down on it as a down payment or a trade-in, whatever the case may be. You're going to take that, and that's what you're going to use to buy a car. Flat fee, no monthly. So what? Flat price, no monthly. So if you saved $5,000, then you can afford a $5,000 car. So start shopping in the used section, or in the ads of the papers, and start figuring out where you can find a car for $5 grand. And people are like, oh, well, I don't want a used piece of junk. Then I'll just have to spend money on repairs, and I'll have to do this, and I'll have to do that. Well, you don't just buy the first thing that costs $5,000. Do a little bit of work. But if you listen to this finance wizard that stepped into your life and they said, take that $5,000 that you saved for your down payment, buy a car that you need within that under $5,000. That's what the max price that you can spend of the sticker. And then take the $500 that you were going to spend per month on the financing and put that and pay yourself with that. Give that back to you. Instead of paying for a car, put $500 in some sort of investment vehicle. And for argument's sake, let's just say you pick a savings account right now. I mean, you can get a savings account with a 4.25% interest rate right now. I mean, those are always fluctuating and changing, but right now you can get a decent interest rate if you just put it in a savings account. hopefully pick something that's a little more profitable or aggressive, but that's again completely up to you. But let's say you take that $500 a month, and after 5 years, you've now saved up a chunk of change, and you've accrued interest or dividends on top of the money that you've put in after 5 years. So let's say I don't even know what is 12 times, let's say 60 months times 60 times 500, so that's 30 grand. So look, now you've got your 30 grand, and then with interest and everything, with the $500 car payment, and with interest and everything, you have, let's say $34,000. 30, to make it easy, we'll round it and say 35. Okay, whatever the case, you put a little extra in from time to time. So now you're $35,000. Okay, cool. You've saved that up, and your finance guru guy comes into you and says, "Okay, listen, you wanted that car that was $40,000 or whatever. So we can get you we can get $5,000 more either out of your trade-in or in your other savings account or whatever. Now you can have that $40,000 car. So take your $40,000, go to the car dealership, and buy and write a check for the car, and then you have the car that you've always wanted." My bet is that very few of you, after working your ass off for 5 years and saving all this money and finally being in the position to write a check for your $40,000 car, if assuming you didn't have a windfall of cash or get a bunch of raises or whatever, if you're still living the same sort of lifestyle, my bet is that most of you wouldn't have wouldn't be willing to part with that $40,000 that you've worked so hard for. You'd look at that car, and then you'd look at your checkbook and say, "Wow, I'll go back to zero if I just write this check for this car. I mean, is the car really worth it?" And some people say, "Yeah, that's my dream car. That's what I've always wanted." And they write the check and they walk away, and they don't have buyer's remorse. They don't think anything about it, nothing. But I bet a good number of you would say, "You know what? Let's look at the cars over there for $25,000 or $30,000, or maybe I'll buy another used one for 20 grand, only it's just a little better and nicer. I worked all of this time for this money. I don't want to just give it away for one car. I'm gonna take a moment and use this. I can put a little more in investment vehicle. Maybe I can retire a little earlier. Maybe I can. I don't know if I want to spend it all on." So now the mentality of it is, okay, you spent $5,000 on a car 5 years ago. That got you through. Sure, there was a couple of repairs here and there, whatever. In that amount of time, you've saved, let's say, between 35 and 40 grand, and gotten some interest and some dividends on top of that. And you think, well, shit, I don't want to just buy it for that and then go back to zero and have to do this all again, especially when now my dividends and interest on my 40 grand is really kind of starting to show. I get these monthly or quarterly chunks of change that are substantial at $40,000. $300, $400, $500 every quarter, depending on where your money is. That's or monthly, $100 to $150, and you're like, wow, I don't know if I really want. I don't know if I really want to just give it all away like that. So here's my point. You walk in right now and you say, "I want that car right there." And they say, "We can put you in. What's your budget?" They say, $600 a month. Okay, cool. We can make that happen. So you walk out of there with this brand new car, and you've locked yourself in now to a let's say, again, generically, $48,000 you've just spent. You're spending it from the future, as opposed to saving it first, investing it first, you making the money, and your $40,000 product is still worth $40,000, but you gave away $8,000 if you financed it instead of doing it yourself. So my point is, I want you. I just, for my people out there that are struggling with different finances or wondering, whoa, I want this, I want that. What if you just paid cash for it? Now, I'm not saying that all debt is bad debt. There is good debt. People leverage debt. People use debt to make money all the time. That's big business. That's business all the time. Nobody's really using credit card debt to make money. I can pretty much assure you that. And let's say it's one of those times where the finance world is doing great, and you can get your financing on your car for say 1.9%. But your money is making you 4.5% or even 6 or 7%. So it's worth it to finance it as opposed to writing the check because you're still making the 5% difference. That makes sense. Might as well leave the money in there making the 6 or 7, 5, 6, 7% as opposed instead of paying the 1%, as opposed to the 1%. Those are the mathematical things that you kind of have to figure out in your situation specifically. But for the most part, if you look at the final number of what that financing is, we can get you in there for $300 a month. All right, how many months are we talking? What's that final number afterwards versus what's the sticker price? That's what you're paying in interest, and that's way higher than what the car is worth. And you're working for that. You're putting your time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears in that. Would you be willing to write the check for it? That's the question of the day. Would you be willing to write the check for it? And I'm guessing that a lot of you wouldn't, which means you should shop for a cheaper car. I don't have any more thoughts on this. I just want you to think about that next time you're thinking about buying a car. It's gotten out of hand with the, oh, well, you can afford this, you can afford that. Not only that, last point. When you have a job and then you finance something, whether it's a house or a car or whatever it is in your life, you have now locked yourself into that job unless you have another one. See, the nice thing about not having debt, whether it be car debt, house debt, whatever debt you have, is the freedom that comes with it. I'm lucky enough now in my life that if I got annoyed tomorrow at my job, I could quit. I could walk out on the spot, or I could put in my notice, and then I'll find another job. I've got enough of a savings to last me a short while that I can go and find another job. And even if I make less, it's okay because I can adjust my lifestyle to not need anything. The only expense I have is keeping a cell phone on, and my rent, or I have rent. I can move to a cheaper place if I needed to. I have options. I'm not bragging here either. I'm just saying, I'm 48 years old. It took me a long time to get to this position. And, again, someday down the road we'll talk about it. I don't know, the way people get to their situations is always a story. My story wasn't pretty, but at least I'm there now. It took me a long time. So I just want people to think more about their finances. Don't think about what you can afford from a finance perspective, from a monthly perspective. Think about what freedoms you want. Do you want to be locked into anything? And B, what money are you working for? Do you want to pay $48,000 for a $40,000 car? Most people don't. If you went in and said, this is a $40,000 car, and they said, oh, okay, cool. Well, just write us a check for $48,000, and you had, and you say, wait a minute. I thought after all is said and done, it would be $40,000. And you say, well, yeah, but I'm just going to save you the trouble of the financing. It's going to cost you $48,000 regardless. So just give me the $48,000 now. You're like, whoa, what the fuck? What kind of ripoff is this? It's the same fucking thing. It's the same fucking thing. It's $48,000 out of your pocket for a $40,000 item. So just think about this shit when in going forward, in your life. If you're buying cars based on the monthly payment, then you're living above your means. That's not going to be a popular opinion. Not everyone will agree with me. But that's my position, and I'm sticking to it. I love you guys. I hope you're having a great week. Happy 4th of July. Celebrate independence. And I hope we can keep it for as long as we can. Every empire falls. I think I'll be long dead before this one does, but someday the United States ain't gonna be the United States anymore. Hopefully that's 3, 4, 5, 600 years from now, but they're coming for us one way or the other. We got it too good over here. Anyway, celebrate your independence. I love you guys, and hope you enjoy the holiday, and I hope all's going well with you. Hopefully we'll get another episode up soon, sooner than later, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace!